Hey everybody, it's Professor Reed. I wanted to give you a little update here. This will be our last essay we're going to do. In the next slide, you'll see that there's two things that are going to be due. We're going to keep this essay short, just 4 pages. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at either Wikileaks or Snowden, Edward Snowden. So you'll see the due dates in the next slide. But you just basically want to choose one of these two to look at. And this PowerPoint sort of gives you some options for that. Okay, and then you're going to write a pretty straightforward argumentative essay about if you think Edward Snowden was good for society, or if you thought WikiLeaks, who was the founder of WikiLeaks, was named Julian Assange, if you think he's good or bad. Okay, 4 pages. Just gonna have my cuckoo clock in the background. You can hear that. And then what you want to do is write if they're about either one of these two. Okay. All right, let me go to the next slide. All right, good. So here's WikiLeaks. That's going to be one of the options for the essays. Now, if you're familiar with WikiLeaks, you'll be pretty aware there's a guy named Julian Assange, and I'm going to put up some sources. I've actually got a pretty nice source overview for each one of these that was made at Penn State, Abington, where I teach, by the librarian there. But WikiLeaks is basically going to be this news organization started by that individual there named Julian Assange, and currently is in jail in England. Now, WikiLeaks as a news model is sort of interesting because it takes source material from like hackers or from other individuals that they're probably going to be getting information maybe illegally or through covert types of ways, and they're going to put it up on their website called WikiLeaks. And the idea is that basically that you're going to WikiLeaks as a news entity is going to be trying to put up information that is for the public consumption. Okay, and the idea is that they're trying to present information without really putting a bias or a slant on it. So I'm gonna go to the next slide. And there he is. There's Julian Assange. If you're familiar with this was over the summer 2019. It seems amazing now with COVID, the fact that we had these conspiracies seem sort of a little less important. But this was a big deal back in 2019. There he is, Julian Assange with a beard there. He's being taken out of the Ecuador embassy. Now, he had gotten into some allegations of sexual misconduct. He, saying they weren't true. However, other groups were saying, you know what, he committed these certain types of acts, and he was had been granted order sort of like an asylum in, I want to say, the Ecuadorian embassy in England. So they eventually got some things in place to get him arrested. Okay, and here's some more about Assange shadow banning his tweets. You can see that article's from 2019. So that's going to be sort of like an area. One of the things you can look at to see if WikiLeaks is a good thing is you can sort of say like it's freedom of speech. Okay. Another picture of him there. Now, also, if you're familiar with the 2016 Democratic National Convention, when Bernie Sanders was considered to be, by many, to be sort of railroaded out of the nomination. Other people disagree with that. One of the things that was a part of that discussion was going to be some emails that had been exposed, a large amount of emails, and the majority of those came from WikiLeaks. So a lot of people said that Assange had worked with Russians there for, trying to basically control the American election. Other people said no, that's more of a conspiracy. He didn't do that. But the idea is that what I guess WikiLeaks or Assange would say is that he's trying to put up information without any type of bias to it. Okay, so for the essay, you're going to choose either Edward Snowden or WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, and you're going to say, it's a good or bad thing for society. If you look back at that first slide, there's actually some examples of the thesis statements. Now, if you're going to write about WikiLeaks, which a lot of people do. You want to look at these, what they call them as cables, and basically cables are going to be where they get information from. So that's where you want to use these cables to classify information to sort of break down, uh, you know, basically explain how WikiLeaks gets their information. They've exposed a lot of things about invasion of Iraq. You can see there 9/11 invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. A pretty famous one happened by this individual by the name of Bradley Manning, who we'll talk about in just a second. And then they've done some other cable leaks about Kenya, about different locations. They try to say that they're politically neutral and that they're exposing information. So the idea is that, if they wanted to do a hack on any, CCP, for example, they would go into, maybe get the personal emails of somebody and put them out. A lot of people are going to say that's going to be something that is incorrect to do, and other people would say, well, we sort of want this idea of transparency. Okay, so there's just these cables. So what you'll do is sort of look at these cables and get them as points of reference. Okay, and here's some more leaks about things that they've done, and this is pretty up to date. And you can see here that's going to be the Hillary Clinton one I mentioned earlier. Bradley Manning, now Chelsea Manning. He actually went through a sex change, so he's now Chelsea Manning. But he was in the army, got access to a computer, and basically showed a lot of the different activity that the United States military was doing at the time. So people had said, well, he's a whistleblower. He's exposing sort of this side of the military that we shouldn't be that proud of, or we should try to make changes to. Other people said he put American lives in danger. So Chelsea Manning basically provided information to WikiLeaks as a whistleblower. Okay. Yeah, there's some pretty famous quotes from Donald Trump saying, "Oh, he loved WikiLeaks," and then when recently, a lot of people have said that they want to have Assange be somebody that gets, like basically, people have said, "Why don't you, as president, go and try to help Assange out?" You used him sort of for the information about the DNC. Trump has said he doesn't even really know who he was, so it's a pretty interesting thing here. Okay. Okay, just some more. These are going to be points that you can go and look up. WikiLeaks did release some information about Guantanamo Bay, which, if you're familiar with that, it's going to be sort of this site that we've had for years that they use to basically torture prisoners. Okay. I like this one too because this shows all the different sort of haircuts that Julian Assange had throughout his life. He's got a lot of style. All right, good. Now here's a little overview, and we'll talk about this a little bit more about the essay and what you can sort of write about for WikiLeaks. But that's just a little like overview for formatting. Okay, now here's the other one you can talk about for the essay. His name's Edward Snowden. So now, 2019, like November, October, he released a book. You can see it's called Permanent Record. So for the essay, you can, 4 pages. Is WikiLeaks Julian Assange a good or bad thing for society? And then is Edward Snowden, is this idea of what he did a good or bad thing for society? Edward Snowden is going to be an individual that worked for a contractor and got access to NSA files, National Security Administration files, and he basically exposed how much information they could access to the general public. If you're familiar or a fan of Joe Rogan podcast, Snowden, who is now currently in Moscow, back in November 2019, he went on the Joe Rogan podcast. So if I was writing about that, I would definitely use that as a source. You can actually annotate that as an example as well. So there he is. That's Edward Snowden. There's another picture of him. Okay, currently in exile. But if you look at like some of the, if you look at like podcast, TED Talks, that sort of thing, he's put out a fair amount of information. Like I said, the Rogan podcast, if you're running about Edward Snowden, I think is a really good starting point. Rogan interviews him, and he sort of walks through his whole process. And then there's Chelsea Manning, we talked about earlier. Okay, and then this gets into some of the military types of things. Okay, and then here's some YouTube videos. So this is just an overview with the due dates on the essay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to post another PowerPoint tonight that's going to talk about the annotation of the sources, try to get those done, 3 sources. I think it's pretty straightforward. Then you got the due date for the paper, and then everything's going to be doing this final portfolio. All right, thank you.